Okay, here I am. All right, so hi everyone. Welcome to DGST 395 Applied Digital Studies, a class at the University of Mary Washington. I'm Zach Whalen, and I'm in charge here. So I don't know why I said it that way. But hello, good to see you all today. Hopefully everybody's doing all right and getting online and being able to watch that. I was kind of testing the video just now with that higher resolution video than what I've been showing on that countdown scene, kind of to figure out the best ways to share video content with you all in the class so we can look at something at the same time. I tried the screening room thing a little while ago in Discord, and it sounds like it kind of worked. I was hoping that I could I could broadcast from one computer and then watch it on the other, but it didn't let me do that. So I was not able to actually test it myself. So maybe because it knows the Discord is like, oh, you can't connect here and here at the same time, basically, with my account. So I might make a second account or something just so I can preview that myself without having to bother you all with it. So it still seems kind of iffy in terms of being able to broadcast Netflix video specifically. So what I did is I put a poll just now in Canvas just to find out, maybe if everyone already has access to Netflix, maybe this is something I don't need to worry about quite as much. So I just put it up here. It's an ungraded survey, just like the other ones, just 2 questions. The first question is, do you already have Netflix? And then the second question is, explain your answer if you need to. So if it's yes, you probably don't need to explain anything, but if it's no, then maybe you might want to explain why not, or what what the challenges might be. I'll share it in the link in Discord here as well. Okay, let me just type it in here. This is a survey /quiz. Okay, so I just link that in there. So again, it should be pretty quick. I wanted to do it in Canvas as opposed to in Discord because this is anonymous, and then it also has the follow-up question if you have some things you want to talk about. So just briefly about Netflix, it's a streaming web service, video service through the web, and many people have access to it. Many people don't or choose not to, and so I don't want to force you to have access to Netflix. But it's also not like you can get a free trial if you've never used it before, and also there is a bit of a workaround where you can get multiple free trials sometimes. I say sometimes your mileage may vary. I can't guarantee that this will work. So I will show you a way to get a second free trial now, but it's something that I can't always promise you will work. Okay, so I will show you that. If you are willing to try this, if you don't have an account and you're willing to try this, that would be great, but if not, that's okay too, and understandable. So let me show you what you do. This is a bit of a, I don't know if this is a hack or a workaround or what, but I'll show you what you can do. And I'm opening a Google Doc so I can just type some things. Okay, so this is a trick. If you're in my classes, I often find it useful to share this trick. So perhaps you've seen this before, or maybe you already know this. Maybe this is pretty common knowledge by now. It should be. Okay, so this is the infinite Gmail trick. So the idea is whenever you sign up for a new service, a new account of some sort, you almost always have the option to sign up with an email account, right? Like enter an email address to sign up for an account for a free trial, right? So this is my Gmail address. Okay, you hopefully know that already. It's one way to contact me. I actually prefer, if you need to email me, use my UMW address, but the trick doesn't work for those addresses, I don't think. So we have to stick with Gmail for this explanation. If you do send me things through Gmail, I will probably see that too. It's just I get a lot of junk through Gmail. So I sometimes miss things. Okay, so here's what's infinite about it. So you go to, let's say I already had a trial with Netflix and I signed up with zach.whalen@gmail.com. My trial expires, I cancel. I go back later and I want to try again with a free trial. Sign up for a free trial, enter this email address, and Netflix is like, oh, you can't do that because you've already had a free trial once. That's understandable. So here's what you can do, and again, this sometimes works. It doesn't always. I haven't actually used this recently on Netflix, but I have Stars and Hulu and CBS, I believe. Here's the trick. The thing is that Gmail perceives that address here the same way as if you add a plus sign after the name part and put anything at all here. I'm just typing the phrase anything at all here, but because I do this multiple times, I sometimes will just make it something like Netflix again at gmail.com. And Netflix will perceive that as a new address, because if you check these against each other, they do not equal each other. But Gmail thinks of them as the same, which is important because Hulu or Netflix or whoever you signed up with will send you send you an email to this address to confirm that you have access to it. It works, and you click, and then you can log in with this email address and potentially get a new trial. Now, the thing is, these are 7-day or 10-day or whatever their free trial things are. You have to remember to cancel it. And sometimes, the downfall of this approach is that it's easy to forget to cancel a subscription. So I have done that. I have accidentally stayed subscribed to things that I realized later I did not actually want, or that I thought I had unsubscribed to, but I had an extra one of these shadow accounts running that I forgot about. So I paid, I paid for like 2 years of CBS All Access that I didn't mean to, and I did not use because I thought I had canceled it, but I hadn't. So, oh well. I only wanted it for Star Trek Discovery, so I didn't want to I didn't really want to actually pay for it because most of the shows on CBS I don't care about. Anyway, so maybe that works, maybe not, but that's just something you should know about and might as well try on different things. But fill out the survey on Canvas as soon as you can so I can see that, and that'll help me decide what we need to do, possibly. Ultimately, the goal is to watch an episode of the TV series Black Mirror. The episode is called Hang the DJ, and it is about the kind of things we're talking about right now. A couple of things about that episode. In terms of, I guess, content, it is not disturbing like other some Black Mirror episodes are, I would say, just disturbing. This one is not. This one does, however, include depictions of adult sexuality, and it's not gratuitous or pornographic. It's very much part of the character development for the characters that we get to know, but it is something that happens. Adults having consensual sexual encounters. So FYI, that's the only really content warning. There's language too. I guess I should mention that. Strong language. But again, it's not gratuitous. It's more about developing characters than about getting away with saying the F word. It's really part of the story. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say for now about that. But please, if you do have access to Netflix, try to please watch Hang the DJ before class on Friday, before 1:40 or 2:50 respectively. Make sure you watch it, and as you watch it, I think you will be noticing things that they talk about in the episode that are relevant to the kinds of things we're talking about in this class, especially today. Hopefully, you'll see some connections, but make note of those. Like, write them down, have notes open as you're watching on paper or text editor, whatever you like to do to take notes. And if you see something really interesting in particular that you want to talk about or ask about later, write down the timestamp for when that occurs so I can pull it up in class when I'm doing class, and we can look at it together and maybe have some conversation about a particular scene or visual, something like that. Whatever you're interested in, just make note of that. Just like if you were reading a book, you would kind of write down the page number of something you wanted to quote. For a TV show or film, just write the timestamp for when something happens. Okay, so if you have any questions about that while I'm streaming, go ahead and get those in on the live stream chat channel or on the Twitch channel, whichever you prefer. But that's basically the idea for Friday, so make sure you're ready for that. Okay, so for today, let's take a look at some things. This is the notebook that is guiding things right now, and this is my copy, so anything I change here won't affect what you've seen, what you've already copied. Won't affect yours, obviously. So we've looked at Friday, we did Monday, today is Wednesday. So here's what's going on. Now, we have a short story, The Soft Truth by Lee Alexander, that I'd like to talk about and I'd like to hear your thoughts about. I have an explanation of how I'd like that conversation to go shortly. Also wanted to know a bit about where are we? So yeah, as we talk about this, I mean, the recommendation algorithm is really very much a topic, right, in this discussion today. So as we talk, or as you think about it, can you remember, or have you thought of, or have you noticed since we've been talking about this, any moments where YouTube seemed to recommend something that was weirdly appropriate or weirdly inappropriate? I feel like recently YouTube tends to recommend very much the same kind of thing over and over again to me. I feel like it's not really giving me anything new. So maybe that's a change in their algorithm, or maybe just the limited kind of thing I watch. Mostly I mostly use YouTube for music, really. So I'm listening to different heavy metal things, but you would hope anyway that my hope is, like, I've been listening to a lot of Gojira lately, so it would be cool if, like, he told me about some bands that were similar to Gojira that I don't already know of. That's kind of a good thing for an algorithm to do, and it kind of hasn't yet, so I'm kind of waiting to see. Anyway, so as we're talking, or as I'm talking, just share it in Discord, in the live stream chat, or general weirdest, most inappropriate, or most weirdly appropriate things that you've seen YouTube recommend to you. Okay, so let's go back, and I wanted to get a couple links because you had some homework. Also, that was from the first, or from last week. I mean, cat videos are kind of the perennial favorite, right? Like, they're always gonna be there. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of things that I wanted you to look at as well. This brief explainer video by Cathy O'Neill to talk about kind of what algorithms, specifically what predictive algorithms actually are. And we are talking about the cultural impact of algorithms, but I think it helps to understand, like, their actual programmatic behavior, their actual thing that they do in programming. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about Cathy O'Neill here, make sure it makes sense to you. And then there's this code practice bit, which I've asked you to work through on your own, and I'm going to work through it on the stream here, and kind of just go through it step by step to kind of demonstrate what you've hopefully already done, and answer any questions if I can as I go through it. And then we'll talk about the soft truth. So yeah, that should get us there. Okay, good. So I'm actually not sure if this is going to play well with audio here over the stream. But if it does, then I'd like to actually just play this whole video. I always have audio issues. Always have audio issues on OBS here. Okay. So I'm going to start it, but I may have to restart it if there's no audio. Oh, it looks like audio is working. Okay. I say looks like because I can't actually hear
I worked
it,
as a mathematician, and then as a quant in finance. I saw the worst of finance. I went into data science, and I was struck by what I thought was essentially a lie, namely that algorithms were being presented and marketed as objective fact. A much more accurate description of an algorithm is that it's an opinion embedded in math. An algorithm is a very general concept. It's something that we do actually in our heads every day. To build an algorithm, we need only two things, essentially: a historical data set and a definition of success. So I build an algorithm to cook dinner for my family. The data that I use on a daily basis is the ingredients in my kitchen, sometimes the time I have, the ambition I have for that dinner. And then I assess the dinner after the fact. Was it a success? I define that because I'm the one who's building the meals. I'm in charge. I have the power. So there's always a power element here. So I get to decide a meal is successful if my kids ate vegetables. My kids, if they were in charge, would have defined it differently. And it matters because as we optimize over time, we optimize to success. The succession of meals that I cook from month to month is a very different path of meals than if my son were in charge. So we do that every time we build algorithms. We curate our data, we define success, we embed our values into algorithms. So when people tell you algorithms make things objective, you say no. Algorithms make things work for the builders of the algorithms. In general, we have a situation where algorithms are extremely powerful in our daily lives, but there's a barrier between us and the people building them. And those people are typically coming from a kind of homogeneous group of people who have their particular incentives. If it's in a corporate setting, usually profit, and not usually a question of fairness for the people who are subject to their algorithms. So we always have to penetrate this fortress. We have to be able to question the algorithms themselves, especially when they're very important to us. We have to inject ethics into the process of building algorithms, and that starts with data scientists agreeing and signing a Hippocratic oath of modeling. But we have to stop blindly trusting algorithms to be fair. They are not inherently fair, and start looking into what they're actually doing.
Okay, so a couple of really important points in that video, and that's why I wanted to show it. Also, I think I just think the animation is pretty clever as far as kind of visually explaining what she's doing. I did not notice the timestamp, so let me see if I can scrub back to one of the early points that I think is really important.
Of finance, I went into data science, and I was struck.
Maybe I can use the transcript to jump to the spot I'm interested in. All right, yeah, here we go. So. I mean, you can see it on the caption here. I think she is right to want to correct a major and really pervasive misunderstanding about algorithms. It's something that we do almost automatically without thinking about it, and that even though I know better, I find myself kind of doing, which is where we tend to trust something if a computer tells us. Like a very common application of this is if we Google something, we have a question, we are more likely to trust the first page of results than the 5th or 6th or 7th page of results. We never even click that far in, right? I mean, no one ever goes past the 2nd page. But the fact that we assume something must be true because it's on the first page, and we do, even if we don't think we do, we tend to do that. That's algorithmic. That's an example of algorithmic bias in the sense that we are over-trusting or over-crediting the Google algorithm with being correct, with being like, that must be true because Google said that's the answer, that's the first page answer. But as you know, that can get really tricky, and as we'll see with some examples, sometimes the first page of Google results can be really weird and can be really can be manipulated, but also can just have strange little quirks that go totally wrong with it. And so we'll see some examples of that, but that's just a very prosaic example of how an algorithm can be wrong. But the idea that because it's math it must be objective is a very common misapprehension, and it's something that I often have to almost convince people not to believe, because it really is pervasive. You may be thinking that too. You may be wondering, like, how can we be how can there be ambiguity when we're talking about numbers? But as you see in the dinner example here, that's not really what an algorithm is. Algorithm isn't math, isn't just math. It's math attempting to model something. And that attemptedness, the fact that it doesn't actually fit onto the real world, but it fits by proxy, means that whoever creates that proxy is the one whose ideas are being represented here. And ideas are opinions, and opinions can be right, opinions can be wrong. So this idea that it's an opinion embedded in math, I really like that. Or sometimes she says an opinion embedded in code or formalized in code. She says slightly different versions of that expression. But the idea that it starts as an opinion and then we just find a way to express it mathematically, I think that's a much better explanation of what's going on and what's actually happening, what an algorithm actually is. And so she does it. I think it's a great point here. Also in the video, you notice there's discussion about ethics and kind of the idea of doing no harm. I like the graphic. I'm trying to find the graphic of the hand shaking. Yeah. So we need to have a Hippocratic oath of algorithms.
We have to inject ethics into the process of building algorithms, and that starts with data scientists agreeing and signing a Hippocratic oath of modeling. But we have to.
We have to stop blindly trusting these and just doing what the algorithm says. And I think it's great. I mean, the idea that it's something that is going to be optimized over time to fit someone's ideas for what is better, like that's another great point about how algorithms aren't just sort of answering a question and then that's right. It's someone's ideas that are being given more leverage and power because they've been expressed algorithmically, not because they're better ideas or fairer ideas or anything like that. It's just that that's whoever had the power to create that algorithm is the one whose ideas get out there. And so there's a lot of power here. And so this idea of a Hippocratic oath of modeling is actually, it's a really good idea. I don't know how that would work practically, but that's the idea. And so the main thing I wanted to get from this and from on the media segment where she goes into some more detail about this is that an algorithm is something that we can create programmatically and try to understand as a series of steps but it's really, I mean, it's the series of steps. It's not the code. It's the idea that we want to get at the end. It's not the idea that it's not just sort of doing these things for us. It's not some malevolent artificial intelligence inside the machine either. It's just a way of kind of exaggerating or in negative cases, maybe weaponizing ideas, and we need to make sure we understand how algorithms get that much power and that much leverage. So in that sense, the takeaway I think from Kathy O'Neill here is you could almost argue that an algorithm is more of a rhetorical expression than a mathematical expression. It's like a way of saying here's the right answer or here's something. Yeah, so I see you all talking about some different recommendations. Let me kind of tune into the Discord briefly, see what you all are talking about. Oh, you are in the live stream chat channel, good. Okay, that's strange. Cooking videos, you know, Olivia gets, I also get a lot of cooking videos. I'm not a huge, I mean, I make dinner, but I'm not a big fan of cooking, but sometimes there's something about watching a cooking video that's more about entertainment than it is about learning. Like I think of the Binging with Babish channel or the Bon Appetit channels, like I mean, it's more entertainment with food as sort of the premise, and that's, you know, that's fine. But I also sometimes watch cooking ones. Yeah, it's a lot of, like, the cooking ones are kind of good. Amish lifestyle, that's interesting. Where does that come from? Yeah. So Carolyn is mentioning the idea of, I don't know what the term is for this, maybe salting or algorithmic salting. The idea that somebody watches something that is not you, and then that influence kind of triangulates, like it pulls your algorithm towards them, but it's sort of in between. And so like your feed ends up getting corrupted by their views. It happens all the time in our family because we have different people who share share devices. And there you go. So DJ is referring to this idea where you think of something or you talk about something and then it shows up on YouTube. And this is something that people have wondered about. You might see it in Google, like ad recommendations. You'll see the ads based on some product you were talking about and but had not searched for yet, and then it shows up there in an ad. It's actually unclear. I mean, people have wondered if that's the case, if it is the case that somehow Google is listening to your conversations. And I've looked into it, and it's not clear to me if it is or not. There are two things worth considering. First of all, there's this idea of like serendipity or confirmation bias. This idea that like you think something and then you see all kinds of random things in the world every day, but you think only a small fragment of those actually are significant, and you latch onto those. And so the tendency to see eerily relevant ads could be that. It could be that those ads were always there, but you never noticed them before, but now you're over noticing them because you were talking about it before, and now you think there's some kind of creepy association there. So it could simply be that. There is, however, I mean, there are patents, like, so if the technology does exist, and it is theoretically possible for like my phone or my Alexa devices to actually listen and record things that I'm talking about and then use that for ads. So that technology, whether or not it's actually being used is unclear, but it is technically feasible, and there is a patent or two that describe that exact thing. So it is possible. I think that it would be, if I understand correctly, it would be illegal to use that kind of software without disclosing it. So, and as far as I know, none of the major ad networks like Google or Facebook or AdSense, one of those others, I don't think any of them have disclosed that they're using it, but it does technically exist. Even the TV. So like, for example, the idea that the one that I saw was pretty creepy is like your phone, of course, has a microphone on it, and it can record what show you're watching and what commercial you're watching. So if you see a commercial on your TV for some product, and then you go buy that product, then that's great news for the person who paid to have that ad shown on your TV. And so there's a patent that describes that whole process where you could report back to that advertiser that product, hey, this ad worked for you because it resulted in this sale. That's the thing that advertisers are always after. They want to know, does this actually work? Which campaigns are actually paying out? And if this is a way to measure that, and it's super creepy, but I don't know. I also remember seeing a patent where if you, similarly based on ads on TVs and recording, and the idea was that when a commercial comes on, if you watching it there say out loud the name of the you can essentially skip the commercial if you say out loud the name of the product being advertised. So commercial comes on from McDonald's and you say McDonald's, and then it skips the ad. So it's totally random, right? So it's, or creepy, I guess. I just saw a question that actually I wanted to respond to too. Just sorry, I'm doing multiple things. Samantha, good point about incognito mode. That's one way to do it. You can also, if you want to go deeper, you can use various do not track kind of things. The Brave browser has this. It's pretty good, although I learned some weird things about the Brave browser recently, so I've stopped using it myself. But Brave is a browser. It's like, it works like Firefox, but it's even more locked down than Firefox is by default. And then you can also use a Tor browser on a VPN if you really want to get sneaky, but that takes some work. So Samantha just also asked for a text channel for tech support. And yes, I will do that now. I will make a text channel. I've just made a text channel called tech support, and feel free to use that. Maybe troubleshooting would be a better word. Maybe I'll change it. But that you should see it now under the text channels in Discord. So yeah, definitely feel free to use that and as a place to reach out for help. I of course will be, talking about things and answering questions, but maybe someone else can answer questions as they need to, if they see the question before I do. Okay, so, and while I'm here looking at it, Jules just asked a question. Now that we are going back to face-to-face, how is this class going to be different? It will be. So we're going actually back to what's plan A, like it's the plan all along. And I see your question, Samantha. I'll get back to you in a second. The plan A is that on a typical week, so this will start on the 14th. Monday will be a live stream for everybody. And then on Wednesday and Friday, the different cohorts will show up on whichever day and carry out that discussion live. So like today's class, eventually, once I stop talking and answering questions, I do have a discussion planned for you all, and there will be things like that where there's a group, some kind of thing that benefits from having multiple people talk about it at the same time. Yeah, and then, so that will be something that's how we will use that face-to-face time. At the same time, there will be another group of students, like up to 2/3 of each section, online participating, doing a discussion like we are all about to do in Discord. So yes, and so let me switch over to tech support because that's probably a good segue. I was about to go through this, yeah, okay, good. So it looks like Brian and other people are helping already as well. Yeah, okay, so a couple of good points here, and I think you all are doing a great job answering Samantha's questions. So let me answer it as well, and then we'll go through it that way. So yes, the idea, so the term is actually, I guess, run, and so you're running the code in each cell by itself. And so you simply run it right here, and this is the starting point here, the print hello world. Hit play to run this, and it should do this. Yeah, there you go. So in this case, it prints out the result because the function I used here is called print, and print is saying, hey, print this, and so it printed that out. Sometimes a function won't actually have any output, like it will not necessarily report something. If you don't see anything, that doesn't necessarily mean you did something wrong. If you do something wrong, you will see an error message. So like, let me show you, like if I forget that parentheses and I run that, then I'm definitely going to get something, and we'll get an error message that's going to show up there. And but I'm going to fix that back there. And I saw Julie's question. So yes, Jules is correct. Yes. Yep. That's the idea. Now, how that actually goes, it may turn out to be awkward or redundant in some ways, and so we may change the plan, but that's the plan. Yeah. Okay, so here, this first cell is simply showing that the print function does these things. Whatever you give it here, it's going to print, or try to. If it can't print it, it'll tell you usually why not, why it couldn't print it. Down here, what we're doing is the same thing, but adding a variable into the mix. So now there's an extra step. So I've defined something called greeting, and then I'm saying print that thing that I just called greeting. So if you wanted to print something else, you could say Wednesday, my dues, and then have it print that. So, and that is my instruction here. So I'm asking you to change the value to print a different message. So that's my change there. That's what I changed. I don't know why I thought of that, except that it is Wednesday, and that's why I thought that. And yes, Sally, that's correct. If you're not in a face-to-face cohort on that day, you are in the online. You are experiencing it online. So that will be either. I don't plan to live stream from class, although technologically it's possible. I plan to have kind of two parallel tracks, and that's what the notebooks are going to guide you through. Okay, so then moving through these, this is, I've written some things here, so I'm not going to like read the thing I've written already. I'm just going to try to explain it again in my own words. Printing the score. This is just showing you that you can, that naming a thing is creating a variable, and here I've created a particular variable. This kind of variable is called a string, which means just text. Here, this is a type of variable called an integer, which is a number. You can also make numbers, you can do numbers in at least two ways. You've got integers, which are whole numbers, and floats, which are decimal numbers. And so you can actually combine them. Now this probably is not worth mentioning or dwelling on. We are using Python 3 here. Integers and floats work a little differently. They work more differently from each other in Python 2 than in Python 3. In Python 3, you can intuitively combine them like I just did, where I have an integer 0 plus a float 50.0, and that resulted in the float 50.0. That's intuitive math. That's how it works. Yeah, I'm not going to show you the example, but it used to be in Python 2 that if you did some kind of operation on integers only, it would give you the answer in integers, even if that was not exactly correct. So for an example, if you did 7 divided by 2, like if you do that in your head, 7 divided by 2, right? 3.5, right? And in fact, Python 3 does that correctly and intuitively, but if this were a Python 2 notebook, it would actually give me the answer 3, because in Python 2 you can't mix integers and floats. Even though the correct answer is a float, 3.5, it would give me an integer as a result. I think that's confusing. Maybe that's why Python 3 changed that, but just FYI, in case you run across a script or something that has Python 2 in it, that's one slight difference. A couple other minor differences, but that to me is the most confusing one. Okay, so you can do some things differently down here. Combining things is often intuitive, but that plus sign is, what's the word? It works differently depending on the context. I'm trying to think of the polymorphic, I think is the right word for that. Meaning the plus sign can either mean the arithmetic plus, like 2 plus 2, or it can mean concatenation for strings. So this plus that as strings would be this, that. Or in this case, hello plus world is going to be hello world. And yeah, so the prompt here is to see if you can tweak that to make it print more elegantly. As you can see, hello world as a single word is not how we would normally write that. So my question is to see if you can figure out where to put a space here to make that look a bit more elegant. You can put one there. You can put one here. You could do both, but now they're going to be spaced out a little bit more. So just kind of, the prompt is just to play with that and see what you can get. Okay, now, this is the error. And as I say here in the instructions, this is an error message. And there's nothing in the notebook before now that tells you what to do here. This is presenting a problem that I have not explained yet. And so my challenge really is to see if you can figure out how to solve a problem like this. It is solvable. There is a correct answer. There is a way to do this. Actually, a couple ways, but that's, well, no, really, I can only think of one way that's reasonable. So I hope you can find it. I hope you have it. I'm not going to give you the answer now because I still want you to try to do this on your own. But once you figure it out, share it down here. If you still haven't figured it out by Friday, then I'll give you the answer by Friday, but I bet you can figure it out, right? So you've got some options. You can see, look at the type. The main error is a type error. So it's saying there's some problem with the type of thing that's happening here. Types refers to, is this a string, an integer, a float, a dictionary, an object, something like that. So it's saying there's something wrong in terms of typing. So what could be going on here? Remember what I just said about the plus sign, it behaves differently depending on the context. So that's kind of a hint. Also within the Colab Notebooks environment, this is kind of convenient. The thing that I do whenever I get an error I don't understand is I search Stack Overflow. And so it's convenient that Colab Notebooks has this little button here that will search Stack Overflow for the error that you got. And you see it just pre-populates this search query with the error message. And then you can click on some of these. And maybe you'll see an explanation, or maybe you'll see some answers. Now, this particular error is so generic that you might have a hard time finding just a straightforward answer. But for really tricky, specific questions, very often you'll find someone that's like, oh yeah, here's the answer, copy and paste. And then you just copy and paste what they wrote, and you're good. So anyway, that's how programming goes. All right, great. So that was kind of my quick walkthrough of that code. Hopefully that helped. But if you get stuck or if you have questions, always feel free to ask. Right. Looking ahead, the next set of code goes into lists and dictionaries, which get a little bit more complicated, but not too much, and hopefully it's a pretty gentle introduction to that. So try it out. Make sure you read the text, the explanation of each of these, and if you have questions or you get stuck, the tech support channel in Discord would be a good place to post your question or your problem. Okay, so let's take a look at The Soft Truth by Lee Alexander. Now this is a short story. I prompted you, I instructed you to think about what you think happens at the end, write it in your own notebook, and so you have a chance to share that, your theory here. So Crystal, I see your question. Let me get back to that. Let me get this discussion started, and then I can interact with some of those questions too while we're talking. Okay, so there are 4 new channels in Discord under the stream section, because this is a live conversation. It's breakout 1, breakout 2, breakout 3, breakout 4. So these are breakout rooms, but they're really discussion rooms. So what I'm going to do for each of these is I'm going to pose a discussion question, or an open-ended what do you think kind of question related to the short story. So I'm going to put a question in each channel. You are welcome to visit one or more, or whichever one you're interested in. The question for breakout 1 is, why do you think the narrator got fired? Okay, so this is kind of a plot question, but maybe you have some answers, and maybe people have different answers, and that might be an interesting thing to talk about. For breakout 2, the question is going to be, why are there at least 2 of her, the narrator? I guess I gendered the narrator there. I don't know if their gender is ever actually identified. So let me revise that slightly. So for breakout 2, the question is, why are there at least 2 of the narrator? Question for breakout 3 is, what do you think happens to the narrator at the end? And then finally, what is your personal gelatin sphere video? Now, so those are 4 channels there. You can join whichever you feel like joining. And for Samantha, join for the breakouts, just whichever, right? So those are different questions. If you feel inspired to join one or the other, you can jump in one and then jump out to another one. It doesn't really matter. So let me just write that here. For this discussion, just choose a question you're interested in discussing. Okay, so everyone has access to every channel. This isn't like Slack where you have to click a link to join a channel. So just click on breakout 1, 2, 3, or 4 and read the question there. If you have an answer, pose it there. And that'll be the rest of this class. We've got about 10 minutes or so, I think. So post your thoughts there, respond to other people's thoughts, agree or disagree if you need to, and let's see what we can make of this. While you're doing that and putting that together, let's see, I saw another question in tech support. Also, I just want to say a few things about this story. I read it again today. I mean, obviously, I've read it before. I really like it. It's a really creepy story, really still very timely, I think. A lot of interesting ideas. It definitely picks up on the doppelganger trope, but it does something really interesting with that. The doppelganger is the idea that there's another of you, and you meet them somewhere. There's a famous Edgar Allan Poe short story where that happens to the narrator character. It's something that's explored in all kinds of fiction and film. It's a very pervasive and very creepy trope. This idea that there's another of me out there. And so this story plays with that idea. It does something I don't think I've ever quite seen in terms of who the doppelganger is or why there are multiple doppelgangers. I have my own theory. I have my own ideas about this story and what I think it means. But I'd like to hear what you think first, and then if we have time, then I'll share my thoughts. But yeah, I'll let you. I'm not gonna keep talking this whole time. I'll let you all just kind of chat through it. But I will of course keep the stream going. While I'm going to go here. What? Yeah, I was looking at Breakout 1, and I think Kat is onto something. The narrator does have an unusual voice. Like, she seems to second guess herself a lot as she's narrating. She seems to backtrack a lot, and that might be a clue about what may have happened, like that ended up getting her fired. And yeah, so this is great because I'm seeing like all these conversations flooding in at once. This is fun. It's a lot to manage, but Siobhan, I think, is pulling on something pretty interesting. It's almost like a trauma occurs, and then the character almost splits, which can be a symptom of trauma, like that people mentally have a sense of disassociation or alienation, and that seems like what Siobhan is implying. I think that's definitely possible. This is in Breakout 2 on the question about why there are multiple narrators or multiples of her. Yeah, okay, so only one so far. Emily attempting in Breakout 3, attempting the what do you think happens at the end question. And I think it's oh, really? Matt? Oh, okay. Like on purpose or? Yeah, and so there's actually, I pose this question sort of in an intentionally ambiguous way, because I think there's two ways you can interpret my question in Breakout 4. The question is, what is your personal gelatin sphere video? And so that you can think of this in terms of the thing that you're always seeking out or always watching for almost a guilty pleasure, like the satisfying videos. I was also thinking, though, in terms of like that thing you think is out there that you may have seen once but you can't find it again, that sort of like white whale that you're always on a quest for. Like, is there something that you remember seeing on the internet at one point which you've never been able to find it again? That would be another way of like, answering that question, what is your gelatin sphere? And there are so many things that I have been thinking about recently from like the early 2000s in terms of just internet and web culture that I remember, but I don't know how to describe it well enough to search for it, or I don't know if it exists anymore. Yeah, so Brian's got a good answer there, planet side too. I mean, this idea of like searching for more and more about a particular topic. I definitely go down those rabbit holes. Mm-hmm. I think that Rachel's right, that the doppelgangers could be, as you say, a dissociative hallucination. So it really could be a mental illness kind of situation. I think that's sort of literally true in the story. Okay, so I'm trying to troubleshoot something with Crystal. Hopefully we can get that figured out. But in general, always ask. Like, if you have issues or something's not working the way that it seems like I am telling you it should work, then definitely ask so I can try to figure that out. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, the game walkthroughs. That actually sounds familiar to me. It sounds kind of like it sounds like a College Humor kind of skit to me. I don't know if that helps you if you're trying to find it again, but a lot of the College Humor stuff is harder. It's hard to find. They ported some of it to YouTube, but a lot of it I think did disappear. So maybe that would help. I don't know. But yeah, good luck. It sounds pretty funny. Yeah, interesting theory, Rachel. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, okay, yeah, so interesting stuff. So since we're getting close to the end, let me give you my quick thoughts on it and what I think is going on here. There's multiple layers, and so I think many of you are correct, even if you're saying different things. So one of the things that is happening, I think, is the character may actually be having a literal like mental breakdown, a dissociative episode. The other thing that might be happening, though, is what we're seeing is kind of a model or a metaphor, and that's probably, I think, where I'm interested in this story. If you think about what happens when you go to Amazon, you buy a shirt, let's say, at the bottom of the listing for that shirt, it'll just say, people who bought this shirt also bought these other shirts. Or on Netflix, it's like, people like you also watch this kind of thing. And over again, we have the algorithm, a predictive or a suggestive algorithm, is imagining a different version of ourselves that watch those things. So it's like saying, the algorithm doesn't know us, of course, the algorithm is not a person, it can't know things, but it pretends as though there is a version of us that it understands, and then it gives us the thing that version of us wants. And that's something that is not literally us, that we definitely can feel separated from. And yet that's the self that the algorithm is always addressing when it makes those predictions. And so if you imagine that as a kind of persona, you can imagine it in different places. So you get that hint here when she talks about seeing her other self wearing the same shirt as her, but in a different color. This is the kind of thing Amazon might recommend. If it realizes you like a certain style of shirt, it might recommend you the same kind of shirt, but in a different color. And I think that's kind of a clue there. Another thing that's happening is, I'm trying to find, I don't have, this is not the highlighted version of this, I have some highlights on it, but several different characters, including the narrator, at different points will say, in reference to something they did in the past, they'll say, oh, that was a different me, like that was a different version of me, as kind of an offhand statement, which is something, just a turn of phrase, a figure of speech that we tend to say, pretty common. But if we think of that as if we think of a self not just as a subjective person who has identity and a soul and a life, if instead we think of a self as a collection of data around a profile, that can literally be true that was a different version of her, like that was a Twitter profile versus a YouTube profile that did that. And I think that's the kind of, that kind of proliferation of identity through algorithms is something that that Lee Alexander is interested in exploring in this story. So I don't know if that helps, but I did find the video that she's talking about at the end. I think the ending is pretty obscure. I think what happens at the end, I think the person here, just the narrator, turns out not to be the real her. Maybe that's a spoiler, but my interpretation is that all along we've been hearing not from the real narrator, not from the real person, but from one of these algorithmically created split-off personas. And once that persona has achieved what it was going for, the gelatin video, it no longer needs to exist anymore. So I think at the end she disappears. So if this were film, she would like dissolve or something. Like it would somehow go away like that. So I think that's what's happening in the story. That's to put it in a more science fiction context, perhaps, than you might have expected, but that's what I think is happening here. Okay, well, it's about out of time. I've gone a little bit long even, so I'm going to wrap it up. But thanks for watching. If you want to keep talking, of course, the discussion questions will stay in there in the breakout rooms. And I'm about to start another stream in a few minutes for Section 2. They're going to join in here as well. So if you're in Section 1 and you happen to still be around, feel free to converse with them. They may also, try to continue the conversations that you started. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, everyone, well, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching. Again, look through the notebook for what's coming up next. A couple of homework things around code, but mainly make sure that you watch Hang the DJ if you can, or if you can't, then let me know through email or via that survey in Canvas so that I can help you find another way to do it. Okay, that's all for now. See you later.